Jose Luis Rodriguez Zapatero and Pedro Sanchez cornered by the Plus Ultra case. Let's get started. Hello everyone and welcome to a new edition of Medidas Cautelares. We're still feeling the aftermath of one of the biggest news stories of the year. Former Prime Minister Jose Luis Rodriguez Zapatero under formal investigation. Under formal investigation for very serious offenses such as membership in a criminal organization, influence peddling, and falsification. We have the order from the judge of the National Court, Jose Luis Calama, that 85-page order in which he details everything. The evidence, all the indications against Zapatero, and they not only corner Zapatero, they also corner Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez himself. We are going to explain it, and I will give you a summary of the most important parts of those 85 pages of the court order. So you can get the key points, because if we had to read all 85 pages of the court order, we wouldn't finish until tomorrow. We are going to share that information. That summary will be on the screen as we always do, but first, if you haven't done so already, remember to subscribe to the Medidas Cautelares channel. We're already about to reach 130,000 subscribers. And now let's go over the key points of that order from the head judge of Central Investigative Court Number 4 of the National Court, Jose Luis Calama. As I said, I've prepared a summary so you can focus on the most important points, because there are a lot of dates, names, companies, people involved, and amounts of money. So we're going to do a summary so you get the most relevant parts of that 85-page order that we've learned about in the last few hours. And it directly points to Zapatero, but it also corners Pedro Sanchez, and we'll talk about that at the end. The judge of the National Court, Jose Luis Calama, has lifted the secrecy of the proceedings regarding the so-called Plus Ultra case, and he has agreed to summon the former Prime Minister as a suspect. Jose Luis Rodriguez Zapatero on June 2nd as the alleged leader of a stable, hierarchical, influence peddling structure whose purpose is to obtain economic benefits through mediation and the exercise of influence before public authorities on behalf of third parties, mainly Plus Ultra. According to the judge, this scheme used shell companies, fake documents, and opaque financial channels to exercise illicit influence, conceal the origin and destination of the funds, and obtain economic benefits for third parties and for the scheme itself. In the order in which he summoned Zapatero as a suspect for June 2nd at 9 in the morning. As well as the search of his office and 3 other companies. The investigating judge recalls that he took charge of this case last March after receiving the transfer from Madrid's Court of Instruction number 15. Over the course of 85 pages, Calama points out that the investigation has made it possible to confirm the existence of an organized scheme of illicit influence, the one led by Zapatero, who allegedly used his personal contacts and his ability to access high-ranking officials in the administration to serve third parties interested in obtaining favorable decisions. The involvement of Manuel Aron, Fajardo Garcia, and Julio Martinez as direct intermediaries with the clients, as well as the operational involvement of his secretary, Maria Gertrudis Alcazar, and Cristobal Cano. It reveals a functional distribution of tasks aimed at maximizing the effectiveness of dealings with public agencies. Secondly, the facts described, the judge adds, show that the influence exerted was not aimed at obtaining general treatment or an indeterminate expectation, but rather at achieving a specific administrative resolution, the approval and disbursement of the public aid requested by Plus Ultra within the framework of the Solvency Support Fund. The chronological sequence of meetings, contacts, and communications, including early access to inside information. Regarding the imminent granting of the aid, it shows that the network acted with the specific purpose of influencing the decision of the competent authority. The investigation also reveals, the order points out, the existence of financial payments funneled through the corporate network controlled by Julio Martinez, through consultancy contracts prepared ad hoc and direct and indirect payments from Plus Ultra and other related companies. This constitutes, according to Calama, a relevant indication of the causal relationship between the influence activity and the economic benefit pursued. He also adds the use of shell companies such as Caleton Consultores and Summer Wind. It demonstrates the triangulation of payments and the participation of administrators acting as frontmen, which reinforces the appearance of a structure designed to conceal the origin and destination of the funds. Just a reminder, we're talking about former Prime Minister José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero. It's incredible, leading an organized hierarchical scheme. The court order also says that there are two ways to obtain the aid for the rescue of Plus Ultra. The investigating judge recalls that the executive board of Plus Ultra tried to obtain the €53 million aid granted by CEPI through mechanisms outside the legally established channels. To do this, they set up two separate lines of influence, one through the then Minister of Transport, José Luis Ábalos, and another through Zapatero. Although both channels reportedly operated simultaneously, it was ultimately the latter, Zapatero's channel, that took on a predominant role and allowed Plus Ultra to achieve its intended goals. The judge believes that the body of evidence gathered demonstrates the existence of an organized network dedicated to exerting influence based on Zapatero's contacts. This network is believed to have acted for the benefit of third parties who, as clients, paid certain amounts in exchange for the services provided. In this structure, according to the judge, Julio Martinez would play a significant role at various levels as the regular intermediary for the network's clients, as the recipient and executor of direct instructions from Zapatero, and also as the person responsible for a corporate network designed to channel the funds received from those clients. The transfer of these funds to the corporate structure would have been formalized through contracts, generally for advisory or consulting services, used merely as documentary justification for third parties. The main ultimate beneficiary of the income obtained would be Zapatero, as well as the company Guad of Guadafab, whose administrators and partners are his daughters. Once again, contracts of a similar nature were used to justify the transfer of funds. The court order explains that the daily management of the network would correspond to a third hierarchical level made up of Maria Gertrudis Alcázar Jiménez, secretary of Zapatero's office, who would directly carry out the orders given by him. For his part, Cristobal Alcacano would assume a role equivalent to Gertrudis, acting as the daily manager responsible for the corporate structure controlled by Julio Martinez and also maintaining regular contact with Maria Gertrudis. The suspects also learned about the granting of the aid before its final approval. In this ruling, the judge highlights that the network's ability to access privileged information became evident in February 2021 when two of the suspects celebrated the granting of aid to Plus Ultra in a message exchange. Before the formal decision of the Management Council and its final approval, which took place on March 9, Plus Ultra's contact with Zapatero's circle was not accidental. Rather, it is part of an organized scheme of illicit influence peddling, led by him who selects clients, gives instructions to create companies in offshore territories, and adopts strategies to formally distance himself from the structure. In this regard, Judge Calama explains that the structure under investigation is not limited to Spain. Following instructions from Zapatero, at least one offshore company was created, Landside Dubai FCFCO or Landside Middle East FCFCO, which was 100% owned by Idelia. Idela Consulencia Estratégica, with a business plan of $3 million over 5 years. And what about Idela? He signed a contract with Plus Ultra to receive 1% of the bailout, about €530,000. And the close timing between that contract on January 19, 2021 and the start of procedures to establish the company Landside on January 26, 2021, and the absence of payments in Spain suggests that the offshore company might have been created to channel that payment. Let's review the numbers for the ultimate beneficiaries. The court order notes this. Relevant analysis. He would have gathered €490,000, would have sent €490,000 to Zapatero, and $239,000 to Quad de Quadefab, so most of the funds received. The moment became Plus Ultra, Prospective Intelligence, Soft People Manager, the one presented, those presented, Zapatero's Environment. In addition, the Gate Center would have gathered €312,000 for Zapatero and €171,000 for Quadefab. Meanwhile, companies from the Thinking Heads group linked to Daniel Romero Abreu Kaup would have sent €681,000 to Zapatero and $12,000 to Quadefab. Crime of influence peddling. For the judge, the facts investigated in this initial phase can be classified as a crime of influence peddling under Articles 428 or 430 of the Penal Code. This criminal offense punishes the conduct of anyone who influences an official or authority or another person who can influence them, taking advantage of a situation arising from their personal or hierarchical relationship with the aim of obtaining a decision that may generate, directly or indirectly, an economic benefit. With the provisional nature typical of this phase, the investigating judge points out that the typical requirements of the crime of influence peddling are present. Why? Well, because there is an influence exercised or simulated aimed at obtaining a specific administrative decision and a functional link between the influence and the intended economic benefit. All of this happens within an organized hierarchical network, which would have acted in favor of Plus Ultra, and the economic benefits would have been channeled to Zapatero and his closest circle. The order also points to a second line of influence. Specifically, it details the activity carried out by those under investigation, which was not limited to efforts aimed at obtaining Spanish public aid, but also extended to a second line of influence aimed at intervening with the Venezuelan National Institute of Civil Aeronautics to secure flight authorizations for the company Plus Ultra. According to the judge, this line itself presents the characteristic elements of the crime in question, as it consists of a plurality of repeated actions carried out with a unified purpose, and taking advantage of the position of influence that Julio Martinez held over the president of INAC, Major General Juan Manuel Teixeira Diaz. For the judge, both this line of influence and the one aimed at obtaining Spanish public aid should be considered a crime of influence peddling, because they involve the same actors, the same offense type, and a single economic purpose, since both respond to a global action plan, in which the organized network puts its influence at the service of specific business interests, obtaining payments channeled through the corporate structure controlled by Julio Martinez. The judge also points out that there is a pattern that fits the crime of money laundering. For Calama, it is provisionally established in these early stages of the investigation the existence of an international corporate and financial structure apparently designed to channel funds of illicit origin, conceal the real ownership of assets, and move capital outside the national territory. It is provisionally established that Zapatero, with the participation of Maria Gertrudis Alcázar and Julio Martinez, gave instructions for the creation of a company in Dubai, whose business plan projected revenues of $3 million in 5 years, and that it would be wholly owned by the Spanish company Idea Consulenza Estratégica, managed by Julio Martinez. The judge notes the close timing between the establishment of that company and the signing of the contract under which Idea was to receive 530,000 euros, 1% of the public bailout, with no record of payment. In Spain, this reinforces the hypothesis that the company in Dubai may have been created to receive funds abroad, avoiding their traceability in Spanish territory. And now, to conclude, this pattern of behavior, in Calama's opinion, fits the typical forms of money laundering described by the Supreme Court, especially regarding the creation of shell companies in low transparency jurisdictions, the use of fiduciary structures to hide beneficial ownership, and the channeling of funds through accounts or financial products located abroad, and the deliberate disconnection between the origin of the funds and their final destination. Therefore, the judge states the scheme under investigation. Not only would they be carrying out illicit activities that could be classified as influence peddling, but also others that could constitute a money laundering offense under Article 301 of the Penal Code, since there are indications that the suspects may have engaged in acts of concealment, conversion, or transfer of allegedly illicit assets through an international corporate structure designed to prevent their tracing. Well, after this summary, of course, to recap, we could say that Zapatero is officially under investigation for 3 or 4 crimes. Criminal organization, influence peddling, forgery, and money laundering cannot be ruled out either. There are still many unknowns because it is not known whether anything was found in the searches carried out by the National Police's Economic and Financial Crime Unit in the 3 companies mentioned. Among them is the one belonging to Zapatero's daughters. We also have to wait until June 2nd to see if there will be a hearing for precautionary measures and if they request pretrial detention for Zapatero, and above all, if the judge agrees to it. And of course, as I was saying, this whole story leaves Zapatero cornered, but it also leaves Pedro Sanchez cornered. Why? Why is Pedro Sanchez also cornered? Because, well, as I told you a month ago, when I broke it exclusively on Medidas Cautelares that Zapatero was going to be charged, the information I was getting was that it wasn't ruled out that Judge Calama might at some point summon Victor de Aldama as a witness. What did Victor de Aldama say? Well, that out of the 53 million euros paid by Pedro Sanchez's government to bail out the airline Plus Ultra, 10 million were diverted as illegal commissions. For Zapatero and for Sanchez through Panama, so Aldama directly implicated Sanchez. We are on the verge of this story ending up implicating Pedro Sanchez himself. As I've said, this won't be the only procedure. There's also the illegal financing of the Socialist Party, which is still being secretly investigated by the National Court Judge, Ismael Moreno. We may be witnessing the beginning of the end, but there's still a long way to go. But well, people always say that nothing ever happens, that no decisions are made. Who would have thought that we would see the former Prime Minister, José Luis Rodríguez Zapatero, indicted and for such serious crimes? Well, nobody could have, well, we wouldn't have believed it, right? Not long ago. And yet, that's how it is now. So, justice works, the police, when they are allowed to do their job, work, the anti-corruption prosecutor's office works, and we've definitely taken a very important step to clean up Pedro Sanchez's corruption in Spain. And that's it for this edition of Precautionary Measures. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, you know you can leave your comments, your opinions, your likes. You know it's appreciated, and you can join as members for under €3 a month like the chosen ones or others. For under €7 a month, today's program is dedicated to our new member, Nuria Tarega. Thank you for joining. And you already know that you can also make contributions via Bizum on the site. So you already know that you can also make contributions via Bizum on the site. 627556370, 627556370. Any news about Zapatero, about the Plus Ultra case, or about the case file, we will have it here on Medidas Cautelares. Why? Because the most important thing is that this information reaches everyone, because information is power. See you soon.